Testing. Hey, what's up, Reef God?
What's up, O?
What's up? All right, let me adjust my levels here. I think I'm too loud.
Now you good on my end in Hangouts.
All right. All right, Jeeves, how are you?
Oh, doing good, bud. Just sitting at work.
Hey, Brian, how you doing? All right, Jeeves. All right, good. I was gonna say you have some background noise, but you kind of muted yourself. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Can't hear you. Still can't hear you. I think you got. Hey, let me do it while Brian let me do a roll call. So we got Reef God, we got Danos, we got Dorian, Don Burgess, Retro Reefs, Mike the Reefer, Death Mage with the Fabulous, thank you, Mage, and Brief Jeeves.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. I was trying to use headphones, but for some reason they ain't working, so oh well.
So, all right. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. You know, just getting off work a little while ago. You know, typical Thursday night.
Are you on the East Coast or West Coast?
I'm in Missouri. I'm in the Midwest.
Kansas City?
No, St. Louis.
Oh, okay. Okay. I've been there once. But I've been to Kansas City a lot. I liked it.
Yeah, my daughter goes to school right outside of Kansas City. She goes to University of Central Missouri. It's like a stone's throw from Kansas City.
Yeah, I used to go to Kansas City conferences a lot. Kansas City, Missouri, and then Kansas City, Kansas is right across the river. A little bit weird. Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri across the river from each other, but it was cool. I liked it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Cool.
All right, so we just give we got 19 people watching, but I'll just give I'll give everyone. I started a few minutes late, but we'll give everyone until about 9:10 to just have people flow in, and then we can get started.
All right, cool. 1 second, be right back.
All right, no problem. Take your time. Hey, FinTime, thank you. OG's Fish Room. Hey, OG, how come you're not a mod of this, man? Come on. Got to make you a mod. Hey, OG, you're now a mod on my channel.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Exclusive, how you doing? All right, so I think tonight I'm going to have Brian does some really interesting things with his Apex. So I think we're going to start by having him kind of give us like a quick overview. If you want to share your Apex dashboard, that's totally cool, fine with you. But just walk us through, like, your Apex, what you like about it, and just give us some of the things you actually, do with your Apex. And I'm pretty sure you're going to get a ton of questions, including from me.
Sure, not a problem.
All right.
So I've been messing with Apex systems probably about 5-6 years now. I started off with an Apex Lite, upgraded to what they call an Apex Classic, and now I am using the 2016 version of Apex. As far as modules that I have a total, just looking at my module thing now, on my dashboard. Seconds. I have total of 15 modules. Anything from EB832s, EB8s. I have 2 EB8s, 1 EB832. I have 2 of the dose units. I have 2 auto feeders. I have 2 PM1s. No, 3 PM1s. Sorry. 2 FMMs. I have WXM. What else? And the PAR kit. So I have quite a few modules. Some things that I do. I have an automatic water change. It's not really a manual water change. I hit feed D in order to change a certain amount of water. I have my RODI unit set up to where it can start off automatically. I can turn it on and it will turn off couple hours later, or when it hits a float switch. What else? I run Radions, I run T5s, so I have those those lighting technologies in there. I run the PAR monitoring kit. I don't know if anyone saw my recent video. Little description of the PAR monitoring kit and what I use it for. I manage 4 tanks with it. My 180-gallon display that's behind me. Next to me, to my left here, I have a 30-gallon deep blue frag tank. I have, and then I also have 2 quarantine tanks. One is a fish oil quarantine. One is a coral quarantine.
You said four tanks?
4 tanks, 1 apex.
Oh man! And how far are these tanks away from each other? And how do you connect them together?
So I have 2. I have my EB832 right here with the main tank, and then I have another EB8 right next to the main tank. Then I have the other 2 tanks are in my laundry room that's across that wall over there. So there is a 50-foot cable that's going up to the ceiling. It's in the ceiling going across the room, down on the other side of this wall in my laundry room. And that's how I connect the EB8s and the PM1s and everything that's in that other room.
Hey, Brian, what kind of cable are you talking about? You talking about like an extension cord or the
phone cable, the four conductor, right?
Yeah, it is a Aquabus cable, specially made.
Gotcha.
I think you can order them from, I want to say firewire.com.
Yep.
They have them.
It has the crossover. Yeah, it has the crossover pins on them.
Yeah.
For the Aquabus.
So it is an Aquabus cable, like I said, specially made. Also, in my ceiling, I have multiple tubes running. I have, what is it? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarter-inch tubes running in the ceiling.
Oh, conduit. The conduit?
No, I'm talking to pump water.
What?
What?
I have a probably another 1-inch tube that is plugged into the outside, so I can bring fresh air into my skimmer when I do that.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So, like I said, my auto water change is set up with 2 PMUPs, and those are being fed with the quarter-inch tubes. I have one going to a drain in my laundry room, one going to the tank, so I can pump water out, pump water back in. I have another 1-inch tube that if I just want to do a quick water change, I can do that. You know, I can pump water either way. Then I use a dose to actually feed my calcium reactor. Now, anyone who uses a dose know this thing is extremely loud, which is the reason why it's in my laundry room. I can't hear it in this room. So I can feed my calcium reactor. Once again, I have quarter-inch tubing in the ceiling, and that's how I do that.
Very nice.
I don't even know where to start, man. I think I got so many questions. But one thing you've just given me an idea is, you know, I know my wife is listening. She definitely listens. But I think you just gave me an idea of putting conduit or somewhere to be able to run cables. You know, when I'm setting wherever I decide to put the tank, just give myself enough wiggle room to like just run enough cables where if you never know if you need it. So that's, if I didn't take anything else from tonight, which I'm sure I'll take a lot, but that's just one idea that I would never have thought about. Everything else would have probably been after the fact. So I think that's one thing.
Yeah. Cable tray, conduit. Very, very easy to maintain and looks clean, especially if you have a recessed wall. You could actually recess the friggin' Panduit into your friggin' drywall, and it looks cleaner than hell. Where the cover just barely friggin', you know, is flush with the wall. That looks really clean on the install.
Yeah. I mean, where all the tubes are going up, you know, it's you can't really see it unless I point that out to you. But yeah, I have so much water flowing through here. I mean, if it ever leaks or anything, I'll feel bad because, you know, I'll mess up my ceiling. But like I said, I have all these tanks down here. This, you know, I call this man land basically. And, you know, between the laundry room and this room in here, I'm pumping water all over the place.
Wow.
And what I did is I just went to Home Depot, and they have, you know, 100-foot runs of 1/4-inch tubing. So I just thread the tube through my ceiling. So, you know, you don't see it. It's not like hanging out or anything like that. But I got tired of doing water changes. So, you know, that's where I started putting tubes in.
All right. So how much feet is the actual dose? Because I think that's something, excuse me, that's something we get. So just your best estimate, how far is the dose, let's say to your calcium reactor, and for water changes, how far is the Neptune dose from the tank?
Well, the dose, like I said, is on the other side of this wall over here.
12 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet?
I'd want to say 30 feet maybe.
Oh, man. That includes up, across, and down, right?
Up, across, and down. Now, with the dose being a, what is it, a paralystic pump, I believe is what you call it, it can pump water almost any distance. I have no problem pumping water with the dose over there. Now, my PMUPs are slow. That takes a little longer. I mean, you know, for me to do, I want to say 10 to 15 gallons, it's probably an hour. But since it's a water change that I hit feed D for, I don't care how long it takes. And everything is secured by float switches. It's the same float switches that I use for my auto top off kit.
I like those PMUPs. I like the PMUPs for a couple of reasons. I like it because it won't take up another port on your Apex. You can plug it into the DC24 port. The one issue I've had with the PMUPs is when I use them for reactors, they do fail. But I think what you're using them for is, I guess you have them in, I've been using one for a year now on my ATO, and that one, nothing has happened to it. But I don't know if it's because I don't run filter socks. I have a refugium. I have stomatella snails. But whenever I have them sort of like unsecured in the sump, they failed. You know, the impellers eventually break. So I guess you just need to protect them that way. Give them an extra protection, but they do handle head pressure well. It's just that, like you said, they're only 100 gallons an hour, so they're slow.
Yeah, they're slow. I have 4 PMUPs. I have 2 that I use for ATO in my laundry room, and then I have I have one here to pump water out. I have another one, I think, for another ATO. But yeah, I have 4 of them total. I've never had a problem with them.
Okay, all right. So I think you're answering some of the questions, but I'm gonna ask them out loud then. How long did it take to just build that setup?
Well, this setup comes from my original tank. My original tank was a 29-gallon tank. So I started out with an Apex light on that. I upgraded to a 75. As I upgraded, I added more and more modules. Then eventually I got to this 180, and I added more modules to that. So I've probably been building this years. I'd say 6 years maybe.
My PMUP is running. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but Reef Keeper and I always joke and say when our ATO containers are low, we can tell because it rattles and make extra noise. So the fact that it's pumping water and I can hear, I know that my ATO is about 15%, and I need to think about. So that's another thing about the PMUP. But I do like the concept of them. So years, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I buy a lot of used stuff. You know, I got 3 kids, 2 of them in college. You know, my wife just started working again, so a lot of the stuff I have is used, but I know how to pick quality used equipment. So, you know, some things are new, like the Apex. I bought that new. but a lot of stuff I bought used. I'll just wait for deals, and when I see it, I'll jump on it. So as far as the different modules, like I said, I have a EB832 that feeds that's the power for my primary tank. Another EB8 that feeds the secondary tank here. I have a dose that I do dose vinegar and aqua power. So that's what that one does. I have a auto feed system for my main display tank. PM1 that is looking at my my quarantine tanks. Well, I got 2 PM1s. Each of those look at quarantine tanks as far as temp probes, pH probes. I have one FMM that does my auto top off. I have another FMM that does flow meters for my returns, flow meters for my my anemone tank. I have a flow meter that does it looks at the water leaving my tank when I do a water change. One, two, three, yeah, 4 flow meters. Another auto feed for my fish quarantine. I have the PAR monitoring kit, my WXM that controls my radions and my MP40s, my my dose that runs my calcium reactor, and then I have two EB8s in that laundry room back there, one for each tank.
The flow meters. Let me ask you a question about the flow meters, because I had them when they first come out. I put them on, and I got to be honest, I didn't find them as useful as I thought I would. So the fact that I'm pumping, after head pressure, I'm getting 300 gallons to the display, and like 100 gallons to my refugium and 100 gallons, I don't think it kind of affected what I did. So what are you doing with the flow meters that you find them useful?
Really, it's nice to have information. Can you guys see my Apex screen now?
Yep, I'm presenting it to everyone. So
it's just nice to have information. I can tell when my return pump is off, but really it's just a nice to have. I can set alerts to it. The good thing about it, like for my GFO, I know exactly how much, how many gallons per hour it takes for my flow meters to tumble the GFO the way I like it. So that's nice because I can say, okay, turn it to 55 and I'm good. The other ones are just nice to have. Now, as far as the controls, as you see, as I scroll down, I have quite a few things on here.
Wow.
Now, Brian, are you running a common sump for multiple systems, or are you running separate sumps?
I run the 180 and the 30 gallon are on the same sump. All the quarantine tanks are just standalone 40 breeders.
Okay.
You don't want to mix your quarantine tanks with your regular water.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was thinking it would make sense to have the flow meters if you're running multiple tanks, because then you can dial in your flow to separate tanks from a single sump. Really
exactly. Like I know the flow going into my bubble tip tank. In fact, what I would love to do is get one of those random flow generators, put it on the bubble tip tank, and get rid of this MP10 that I have in here, because it's an anemone tank. They can just one day decide to walk. So I was thinking about that. And I would have to have enough flow in order to do that. So flow meter is nice for that.
What size flow meter do you think you need for the anemone tank?
I have a 1-inch flow meter for that.
Oh, you do have it. Oh.
Yeah, my left and right flows for my display tank are 1 inch. My bubble tip flow is 1 inch. My GFO is a 1/2 inch. And the other one I don't have really displayed on here is the 1/4 inch. Now, I've always had issues with my calcium reactor. So the reason I got that 1/4 inch flow meter is I wanted to see how much water that I was pumping through my calcium reactor. And it wasn't until I got the flow meters on the rest of the returns and stuff that I noticed my flow is never the same. As you look at the graphs here, it moves. So what would happen is my calcium reactor would get more water for a little while, then it slowed down, then it'd speed up. So I was never getting a constant effluent level. I'd set it to 100 milliliters. A week later, it'd be at 90.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that problem with the dose. I also had that same problem with a MaxiJet pump, because my sump is not the cleanest sump. With a dose, though, I don't have that problem.
Okay, wow. You know what? I'll tell you one thing again. I had taken I got the flow monitoring kit when it first came out, and I took them off, sell them, because I thought I didn't need them. So I think now you're convincing me. Maybe I'll hold on to them because they'll come in useful. I know someone asked, can you control from your phone? Yes, absolutely. There's an app.
Everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's an app.
In fact, don't tell my boss this at work, but I look at my tank all day.
I like the app and I like the alerts. At first, before I know Neptune at one time had said they weren't going to do apps, but the thing is, I'm glad they did the app because you get alerts now, and also I have an Apple Watch, so it's nice to get the alerts to like your watch when something goes wrong. You'll get the alert to your watch if if you don't have your phone on you. But yeah, the app is pretty good. It actually has this little feature that I like, this little slide feature that allows it prevents like accidental you like pulling up the app and changing something that I do like. And also it sends you alerts. I like the fact that it sends you alerts. So you do get alerts. Someone is asking, what on your tank can't you control with an Apex?
I can do everything. I can feed. I can do a water change. I have to change my skimmer cup. That I do. I have to change my skimmer cup. I physically have to change carbon, GFO.
So
that's
we
about
all
it.
have to do that. We all have to do that.
Yeah, that's about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm still in awe of the setup you have here.
I mean, you still have all this stuff in here that I haven't even displayed on my dashboard. This is stuff that I have programmed that I don't need to see. Like, I don't need to see all of the outlets that I use in order to control my auto water change.
Okay.
There's a bunch of virtual outlets that I do, that tell the system, okay, you don't need to pump, you don't need to pump RODI water into the system. Wait X amount of time before you start the other pump, or wait till a float switch is triggered to start another pump. So a lot of that programming it's hidden. You really can't see it. To give you an example, let me find one. Like this one, VO, what is this one? VO HEO reg. This tells my system when it is in a regular auto top off mode versus auto water change. Because of course, as the sump level gets lower, I don't want the HEO to start pumping water in.
Okay, wow.
So I mean that's one of the things. Another one, let's say with my let me find a good one. If my radions, or actually anything, it doesn't matter, whatever is throwing out par, if a light is on, whether a T5 or a radion past a certain amount of time, I'm going to get an alert. That way, if I have someone over and I'm showing off the tank, I forget to leave the light on, I'll know about it. So that's what this does. The par is greater than 40 between, a certain time, turn it off. But if it's on, between the times that I'm not showing here, send me an alert.
Okay.
So, that's the type of thing, I try to make it so I have multiple fail safes.
Someone is asking, what is the 32 in EV832? And I'll ask a follow-up question after you answer this one, which I always have a tough time sort of, at least I don't explain this in a way where people understand, but what is a virtual outlet and how is it different from a physical outlet? So the first, what is the 32 in the EB832?
My guess would be maybe it's a 32-bit processor inside or something. I don't know. Or it could just be, you know, they wanted to call it a higher number. Mm-hmm. But the EB832 has the ability to do power monitoring first off. That's what this is. So I can tell how much power my tank is using. So, you know, this is only one EB832. So you remember I have a bunch of other EB8s. So this is telling me over a year's time, this is how much money it's costing to run my tank.
Oh man, my wife loves that.
So that's one thing that EB832 has. You can do power monitoring. For example, if my return pump turns off, my skimmer is going to turn off. And the reason being, my return pump is a Vectra. So I really can't do like feed mode, things of that nature. But I can put my Vectra in the feed mode and just turn it off. When I do, my skimmer will detect, well, not the skimmer, but that outlet will detect that the EB832 is not taking any power up. See here, the Vectra right now is taking 76 watts. Mm-hmm. If this goes to a certain level, and I want to say it's like 15. If it goes below 15, it's going to shut off the skimmer. So the other thing you have is you can plug in PMUPs directly to an EB832. You can plug in a dose directly to an EB832, and you don't need the power brick. So that's the advantages of it. It's just a smarter outlet. Now,
before we started, I forgot his channel. His YouTube channel is ThaBizness Reef, and I posted a link of it, and I'll post another link. But he has an awesome. It's ThaBizness BIZNESS Reef, the Bizness Reef tank. And once this goes to YouTube, I will post a link and I'll put it in the description, you know, so you can go over to his channel. But he has an awesome channel where he goes in depth about, you know, Apex and stuff. So his channel is definitely worth checking out. And I'm sorry I didn't kind of do that before we started. So
another thing that you'll see on my channel is a lot of microscopic work. I have a microscope, and I enjoy that part of the hobby as well. So you know, I've got a couple videos of bristle worms up. I've squished bubble algae under a microscope to see what it looks like. I've looked at the skimmer, you know, kind of see everything that's in there. So if you're into the microscopic world of our reef tanks, take a look at those videos too.
All right. Someone is asking, since so much of the tank is run off the apex, what backups do you have when the power, if and when the power goes off?
First off, I have a generator. So, you know, if the power goes off, I'm going to get sent an alert. So, you know, whenever apex, the heartbeat stops working, I'm going to get an alert. So I don't work too far away from here. So worst case scenario, I can come home, turn on my generator, call it a day. Eventually, I'm going to have battery backups, but I haven't got there yet. But that is something I definitely want to do. The generator can run my tank and my refrigerator and maybe my internet connection to watch Netflix or something. So that's important.
And I'm assuming you always, hey CJ, how you doing, man?
Yo, I'm in here just hanging out, man, soaking up some of this advanced softs.
All right. And I'm assuming you also have stuff programmed, like you have the fallback and stuff. You have all of that set up how you want to do if it loses connection.
Yes, I have fallback mode set up. I have a video of that on my channel. When I first got my Apex 2016, like a lot of people, I had issues with it. It actually died on me on a Friday, I think it was. Died on a Friday. I ran fallback mode until I got a replacement, I want to say Tuesday. So during that time, the only thing that I don't have running my calcium reactor didn't run because I couldn't turn on and off my my CO2. So I had to manually dose for a while for that. My heaters, of course, I have those set to where it's not going to burn the tank up, so I don't need the temp probe, and that's about it. You know, the lights were at the time they were programmed with man, what's the Reef link. I had a Reef link on at that time. I've since gone back to WXM, so in a situation where my Apex dies, I'd probably keep my my Reef link or just program the power heads and lights manually. Or I can just run my T5s and, you know, call it a day and do that.
At WXM, I just hooked mine up, man. I'm interested in hearing some of the things you've discovered it can do, and maybe some of the tricky things that most people don't know about it that may hang you up.
Sure.
You know
here, let me go ahead and share again.
Because I got a second light coming tomorrow, and it's going to be interesting when I connect it. What ways I'm going to be able to program it or set it to where I can record the tank. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. All right. So first off, with my radions, I have 3 radions on my main tank. I have 1 radion on my bubble tip tank. Then I have another radion on my frag quarantine tank. Like I said, I buy stuff used, so radions don't cost me as much as, you know, if I walked into a store and bought one. I'm cheap.
Right.
So just going to take a look at my left radion. This, if I remember right, is the AB plus schedule.
It's a Gen 3.
This is a Gen 3. Now, one cool thing that you can do when you have radions, T5s, and a PAR monitoring kit is you can put your PAR up here. So you can see your PAR graph on top of your radion graph. Or your T5 graph. Where are my T5s?
You're running an Aqua Blue special there? Wow.
Yes. Aqua Blue special, Blue Plus, Coral Plus.
Okay. All right.
So is this the same? Is this the same with every light, or you just hit the drop down and switch between your left light, you know, your anemone light?
If I wanted to copy the schedule to another light, or, you know, I can do this, and this will give me, you know, I can select where I want to take that data from. So all my radions are the same. So I would just do one and then copy that into the other 2.
Gotcha. So you can copy it, then go into the other one and import it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking about schemes.
You notice any timing issues with it? Like when you copy it over, are they coming on exactly the same time, or are they
exactly the same time?
Okay.
The only problem I have on my radions is when I do lightning storms. It acts weird.
Gotcha.
So here are the schemes. Say, like, if you wanted to grab an AB plus, you know, here it is, or Neptune's lobby tank from Russ. If you're in the Apex forums and stuff, you'll see Russ is a pretty popular guy there. You know, these are other people's schemes that they're running. And there's tons of them. Some are highly rated, some are not.
Wow.
And you know, you can do filters. Do I want a fish only tank, a SPS coral tank? So let's say I have all SPS and I wanted to find a new scheme. I choose SPS. No, don't see any.
I got an idea. I think I'm gonna make my own personal CJ's filming
People
scheme.
download it.
You know what I'm saying? I think I'm gonna make a scheme and share it with everyone what I record my tank with. I think that'll be cool to share.
So this is another thing I do. We're in the advanced configuration now. So this data you see here is from the wizard. When you do a wizard, it creates that T data. Now the other ones are outlets that I've created. I try to keep all my outlets kind of labeled the same. Any virtual outlet has VO underscore radion, whatever. And then my profiles, same thing. Anything that's a radion profile has RN. So it comes from me being a programmer. That way, I can look at this and instantly tell, okay, here are my radion ones. My vortex are VTs. My dose I haven't really did a naming convention for, but you know.
Damn, you're damn mad scientist, man.
But you know, I could easily tell stuff that way.
So you got a virtual outlet set to where if you flick it, it changes your radion's lighting.
Yeah, all of these.
Program. Okay.
Okay, just going back to a question. I know Jeff Daily Reefing has a question, but I think so just give us a quick synopsis of what is a virtual outlet versus a regular outlet.
Sure. So a virtual outlet is an outlet that
Speaking to the Ecotech guys.
Yeah,
you
exactly. You don't have
it's one of the main. It's like a programmer.
Exactly.
Brian's
it's a way I can do things. I can make decisions.
No, not Brian.
Based off of the virtual outlets.
No, it's not Rico's channel. What are you talking about? Y'all hear this arguing over here? All right.
So here's an example of a virtual outlet.
Mm-hmm.
This is doing no, I'm sorry, that's not a virtual outlet. Here, let me show you a virtual outlet. Be here. So I have a virtual outlet that is set up. It tells me when my sump is low.
Mm-hmm.
So I can do an alarm off of this one if I want to. It's an outlet. It has an on, off, or auto, but it does not connect to a real outlet on an EB8 or EB832. So when my sump is low, my float switch for my HEK, or actually my optical switch, is going to go to the on mode.
Mm-hmm.
That's all this does. I have a lot of different virtual outlets. Another example would be
so when you're so you set up that virtual outlet to sort of turn on and off if your sump level gets high, and then from that you're able to trigger other things, like for instance, if your sump level is high, do this, send me an alert, or stop pumping water, or turn my ATO off. So that's how you sort of like use virtual outlets to set something, and then you can trigger devices based on that.
Correct.
All right.
And like I said, I have a lot of them.
So I have a quick question on that, because I've always wondered this. So on the virtual outlets, what is the benefit? So like in that example, you know, if sensor ABC, whatever, is closed, then do this. Is it a programming limitation where you can't just say like directly program an actual outlet to turn on or off based on that switch? Is there like not logic to do that, where you have to write that middleman virtual outlet?
There is no real if else then type statements.
Okay.
You know, to give you an example, the one that I have for the lights, if I leave them on, where did that go? Night par. So I can do these kind of statements. If something is, then on. If something is not, then off. But if I want to do multiple steps, I'd have to check multiple outlets. Now, the thing that I probably use virtual outlets the most for is controlling my radions and controlling my MP40s. So, for example, if I turn my Radion VO Radion 12K to on, what it's going to do is my Radion outlet when you go to the advanced programming, if the outlet VO Radeon 12K is on, then run this profile on my Radeons.
Oh, no, I got it now. Okay.
So if I want 14K to come on, I turn on my virtual outlet that has 14K. When I turn that on, the Radeon is going to say, oh, 14K is on. I'm going to run 14K. Now, the thing you have to think about here is commands are run in the order that they're put in here. So, of course, the first thing that's going to run is the T data from the graphs. After that, my Radeon test, and that's like if I want to test something, my 12K, my 14K. So if I have on 12K and 14K at the same time, 14K is going to win. Now, I also do that with my MP40s. Once again, you go into this. Well, I don't have it set up anymore, but
so the one on the bottom of the list takes priority, right?
Say that again.
The one on the bottom takes priority.
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have any of these set up on? No, I haven't set any of these up, but I have the buttons there for if I want to do it one day. But I normally just set the programming here and call it a day. This is a Vortex that's on the back wall of my 180. You know, same thing for my calcium reactor dose. This is running different schedules. So from midnight to 8 a.m. it's running. It runs the same schedule, but with the dose, you have to. I'm programming it instead of going through the wizard here. I don't like the wizard when I'm doing stuff with calcium reactors. So it all takes advanced programming. And here's the calcium reactor programming.
How steady is the pH in your calcium reactor, your graph? I'm curious.
So here's the pH in my calcium reactor. I only have a spike occasionally, but it tends to stay on most of the time. It goes off for a minute or two and then comes back on. So let's see. The regulator went off at 259, kicked back on at 309, turned back off at 645, came back on at 654. Then it turns itself off at 8 o'clock, starts back up at 8:03.
Yeah,
but
what's the causes of that? Why isn't yours a flat line? You know, just straight.
I could if I played with it just a little bit more, but I'm satisfied with it at this point.
Gotcha. Okay.
It stays on like I wouldn't want it to kick on and off every 3 minutes.
Right. See,
but every couple of hours, I'm fine.
I try to set mine to where I can go days and days and days without it kicking on or off.
Yeah, I got close enough to this level, and my alkalinity hasn't really moved. It hasn't moved since I set this up.
Gotcha.
And at this point, I was like, it took a little while to set this up with a dose because obviously there's not a lot of examples to go after.
Right.
You know, I only know a few people. You know, Terrence at Neptune being probably the primary one doing this. And I got the idea from him. It's not an original idea by any means, but it works.
Yep. You think it'll work with a PMOP?
Yeah, and actually, if I didn't do the calcium reactor, that's what I was going to do, and I was going to tee it off to where I would know how much water is going through by sending water through another tube as well. I would have had like a T or something.
A bleed line, so it wouldn't put too much through the calcium reactor, too much pressure.
Exactly. And another thing I was thinking about doing is putting that 1/4-inch flow meter on that bleed line, so that way I can see how much water is going out of that line, and I can just do a little math and figure out how much is going through my calcium reactor.
Yeah, that's something that interests me because it saves an outlet on your EB8.
Yep. The problem with using that 1/4-inch flow meter though on a calcium reactor is you typically only want, say, 100 milliliters of water per minute going through your calcium reactor. That's not enough to really keep a steady rate in the 1/4-inch flow meter.
Right.
It's a great idea, but it didn't work for me.
I'm with you.
All right, we got a couple of questions, Brian. So earlier, someone wanted to just explain a little bit more on what the FMM module is.
The FMM is the fluid monitoring module. You can plug in a couple of different things to this. You can plug in a optical switch, which is kind of like the float switches from the old breakout boxes. This is just a more high-tech way to do it. You can put in a leak detector, which just tells you if you got a leak somewhere in your tank. You put the leak detector on the floor. If it senses water on the floor, it will send you an alarm. And then you have your flow meters. The flow meters measure the amount of water going through it. So I have flow meters on my 2 return nozzles. So I know how much water is going through my returns at any time. I think that's it.
All right. This is a good question because this came up this week when CJ was, and thank you, Bates, for reminding me multiple times. So this came up when CJ was hooking up his radions. What do you do when your apex fails? And how do you control? So another thing that happened to CJ is CJ, his apex failed and he couldn't get connection to it through Fusion, when you go to apexfusion.com that way. So what do you do when your apex fails? And if you have some tips on things we can do before, that we can sort of set ourselves up, if and when it fails, and how do you control or get to the apex if Fusion is not working?
So I'll take it the easy one first. If Fusion's not working, you can put in the local IP address of your apex unit. Like mine is 192.168.1. I think it's 85. When you put that in, you get the local version of Fusion. Looks just like Fusion, but it's missing a couple of things. That's the way you would access it if you don't have internet connectivity.
So what I do before, I actually set up my apex with a static IP address. Say I have the button pad. And for the new Apex doesn't come with, I don't know what it's called, the controller pad. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the official name is. You can always go on it and get your IP address. I know we're getting into geeky stuff now, but you can always go into the control and get the IP address there. But what I do is I set up a static IP address with my Apex locally. So I know I go, like you say, you go to 85, I always go to 50. I have 2 Apexes, 50 and 51 are the 2 of them. So I set up, but what if someone has configured the Apex and they have the 2016 Apex, they don't have the controller where they can go on, and they haven't set a static address. So someone's sitting here and, they're having an issue connecting to Fusion. What do they do then?
If I remember right, there is a configuration mode for the Apex 2016. You can plug a network cable into it and put it on your local area network, if it's that close. Without that IP address, I really don't know. I think you would have to go into that local configuration mode.
All right. So on the stream the other day, I don't remember who it was. I think it was Reef or someone else. There's an app you can get for both Android and iPhone called Hey DM, you're just causing some static. So can you just mute until? All right, thank you. Yeah, there's an app called Thing. So when you open that app and you run it on your phone, it sort of gives you the local IP address of every device that's on your local network. So you'll see, so mine is called Red Sea Reefer. So once you open it, I sort of see all the devices. I know you guys can't see this now, but when you, that's how we were able to get CJ to connect to his to find the local IP address. Install the app called Thing, and once you open it, it tells you all the devices. So I'm seeing my Xbox, my Hue Lights, my Echo. It's telling me my Fire Stick, all of that. So that's a quick, easy way that we figured, the other day how to do it. And I guess we go on to the harder question now is what to do when the apex fails.
So fallback mode is what I would use to keep your life support going, your pumps. I probably wouldn't put my lights on fallback mode. Worst case scenario, I'd probably just program my radions or, you know, put my normal lights on timers. But fallback mode is how that's set up. If the EB8 loses communication with your apex unit, it is going to either be on or off or run. I think you can run a profile on some of the things, but it's that fallback type of mode. Like when my system died, I had my MP40s, I believe. I had my power heads on it, so my power heads would keep running. My return pump would keep running. You know, my heater, I just unplugged from the apex and plugged it into a wall. So that way I had power coming to that, but I would set the thermostat, you know, just a degree or two higher than what the apex was set to, so I won't burn my tank up. But those are the kind of things you have to think about when you're doing your programming and you decide what's on and what's off.
Right. You're right. I never plugged my lights into my apex. Didn't have any need, but I'd rather my lights default off. I don't think, you know, something happens and they do without lights for a day. I don't think that's going to kill anything.
No.
So now that I have T5s, fallback is off. I'd rather my lights be off than having your T5s running 24/7. But return pumps and power heads, I want them on.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you can run a week without your lights.
Yeah, a short will bypass your fallback safety measures, though. That's what we found out.
Yes, and so CJ had a short the other day, and he found out that there were a few devices. So CJ, what didn't, I think you had one specific module or one specific outlet that didn't follow the fallback mode. I think your ATO pump kept pumping even though he had it on
24-volt outlet or whatever outlet that is that the Piedmont pumps to. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It got stuck on, like permanently on. So
Reef, come here, say hi to the reefing community.
Yeah, he wants to get on camera. What's up?
My son. It's delayed there, but here. It's my son, y'all.
How you doing?
What's going on, man?
All right.
What's up, baby?
All right, now go. Let's get at him.
Brian, are you a programmer?
I have programmed before. I've been in IT for over 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said 36 years?
No, 20 some years. 36. Yeah, damn, I look that old.
CJ said 36. I don't know.
Man, he looks like a senior technician, man. He looks at the top of the escalation chain. That's what he looks like.
Yeah, I'm close to the top. I'm not the top.
Yeah.
But I'm up there.
Yep.
I had a failure once, and literally, I mean, I don't have an advanced Apex. I think it's overdone for a 75-gallon tank, but it turns out it was the display that had a failure, and it took me taking the entire thing apart to figure out that the display had a short. It needed the board replacing, but in my case, you know, my stuff followed the fallback option. The other day, CJ, I think he plugged his radio. Anyway, he screwed up with something. Don't put CJ's business out there.
Big screw up.
Yes, he screwed up something. I don't want to put CJ's business out there, but you know, he big screw up, and yeah, it didn't follow the fallback option. Like his ATO pump kept going, which was a little scary. So I think CJ's gonna make a video about that. So
yeah,
we'll definitely send it to Apex once he makes the video and see what they say.
That video's coming. You know what? It took this just now. My water level in my sump got back to normal. How many days ago was that? 3 days.
Oh man, that's Tuesday. Today's Thursday night, so 2.5 days.
It took 2.5 days to evaporate all that extra water.
Oh
yeah.
Ah, okay.
Hey, so I got 2 questions. Hopefully the first one's a simple one. So I've got the ATK, and I use the high level ATK to monitor high level in my sump. So in feed mode, How do you program it to exclude the feed mode time to send me an email alarm about a high level? Is that possible?
You can turn if you don't want it to send you a high level alarm when.
So every time I go into feed mode, obviously, the return ramps down, and so my sump level goes up from the draining. And so I get a level that I've high leveled, or I get an alarm that I've high leveled, and then I get an alarm that alarm is off when feed mode is over.
I believe it'll be if feed, and then whatever the feed mode is on, then off. That you put that in your outlet for your alerts, and that will turn that outlet off.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll try that. And then my other question, so I haven't really spent the time to look into the power monitoring. Are you utilizing that on your 2016?
I only have one EB832. Now you can't really do power monitoring on the EB8s. It's not smart enough. So right. I can see.
So can you show me? So can you on your screen? Can you show me how to go in and configure the power monitoring? Because I've got two 832s.
Interesting stuff. Let me get my pen.
Reef Dudes always talks about that. Like that's how he triggers feed mode with his vector pump. But I've just never taken the time to figure out how to do that.
Oh my God.
All right, so your power log is here. As far as triggering things with it, let me find my skimmer.
And basically, I just want to know, because I need to utilize the feature since it's there, and just like my Biz pump, it runs at 170 watts. And so, how do I go in and alarm if it's over or under that normal range?
All right, sure. So here, let me go back to my skimmer. Where's my skimmer? All right, so here's the syntax of the watts right here. So if you want to alert if your watts are under or above a certain level, the syntax would be if output, then whatever the device is, watts, greater than or less than whatever that value is, then on. You would put that in your outlets for your email alerts.
That's pretty simple.
Now I did, similar to what someone said, if I turn on any one of my feed modes, then I'm not going to get any alerts because you're right, the water level goes down, things are not normal. So that's one way you can do that.
If watts is the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, I'll show it up again. Write it down. Whatever.
You think that'll work good on your skimmer or something? Like if your skimmer's drawn or sucked in something, wouldn't the watts go up on it?
Yeah, I mean you can do it that way. There's another way to do it also in what is it? Power usage alarm. This is a wizard that does the same thing. Now, the thing I don't like about the wizards is it doesn't put the alarm in that alarm outlet, if I remember right. That's why I don't really use it. I've used it for one or two things, but,
Is that a good way to get the coding that you may need?
Yes. It's a good way to set it up without having to code. Put it that way.
Right. So
you would choose your device. Let's say my calcium reactor recirculation pump. It will give you a maximum and minimum. So it knows, what type of wattage you've used on that device.
Pulls on
average. You can increase it, decrease it, whatever you want to do. I'm going to hit cancel here because I don't want to set that up.
Right.
But these tasks, how I got there is from this button here.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of nice tasks. There's tasks to set up your auto top-off kit, a chiller, your clock, your probes, your dose, flow sensors.
I can't believe that I've been deleting 2 emails and dismissing 2 notifications every time I feed, and all I had to put was if feed A, then off.
Yep.
Whoops. What happens when you don't ask?
Man. Don't tell me about what
For
absolutely
people
don't ask.
who want to know more about the programming with Apex, there is a forum. It's forums.neptunesystems.com. Any question you have can be answered on that forum. I'm on that forum daily.
How about you just keep pumping out 3-minute educational topic specific videos and build a Neptune
I can do that
playlist
too.
library that is second to none on YouTube. I think you could do that. I think you could.
Yep.
Yeah.
Appreciate the help, Brian.
Yeah, not a problem, man. I mean, I love the Apex. Obviously I've done a lot with it, and as new things come out, I'm interested in the Triton. I wonder how would an alkalinity meter go along with my my dose system. If the alkalinity is too high, I can turn off my dose. If it's in a certain range, I keep it on. Once it gets out of that range, I can make decisions on what to do. So I'm excited about the new things that Neptune has coming out.
I think you've single-handedly just all the other modules that I think I've dismissed and said, oh, I wouldn't need that. I think tonight you single-handedly just sold me on all of them.
God, here we go.
Here
we go.
Oh, come on. Even the par monitoring kit, which I thought, oh man, I got a Senai, I don't need that. But the way you said I can monitor and see if I leave my lights on, turn them off, and oh man.
It's going to be an expensive stream for you.
What's the price on the par monitoring kit versus the Senai? Are they exactly the same?
No.
The par monitoring kit, if I remember, is a little bit more than the comparable apogee meter.
Oh, okay.
So it is an apogee meter. First off, it's an apogee meter. The only difference is that, and I got this from Terrence, is that your apogee meters it has a metal coating, if I remember right, with it, where the Neptune Apex meter doesn't. It's made to stay in the water.
Right.
PMK is $300, CJ.
Well, it looks like I'm still going with the Senai.
But think of all the other things you can do with the PMK, though. I mean, with a Senai, I can't do something like this.
Yeah, and leaving it in there, I guess, would.
So here's my par. I can add other things to this chart. I can add my radions.
Can you tell, like, for instance, when your T5s are sort of, at their end of life, can you tell that there's a par difference?
I believe you can. I can tell par differences. Like you see what the par looks like now. I'm going to go back a little while because I've been raising my par up slowly. So this is when I cleaned it and I upped it 5% in one day. And I know that because I put events in here. If I can just get it to, that's another thing I hate about this. So I know I cleaned my par meter at this time. And I know I increased my lights. So I can put notes in here that remind me what I did. That has things related to lights.
Hey, Jeff said his phone kicked him out, but thanks for the help, Brian. I know. All right. He helped. Thank you, Brian. This has been an education for me too. Did we lose you, Brian? Because we're not hearing any audio.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we are. All right. I know CJ's phone died. All right.
Yeah. So, my calcium reactor again, I can see how much water is being pumped into that. I like the DOS. At first, I didn't. At first, I liked the DOS. Then I didn't like the dose. Now I like the dose again. And I have two of them. So,
for me, space is a premium. So the thing is, I'm using the GHL doser, GHL dose 2.1. And the reason why I like it, one of the reasons I like it is because it's compact. Space is a premium. And so and the other thing is, the dose is over engineered to be able to handle water changes. What you're doing with it, pumping long distances. While I think GHL separated those into two different products. They have a dose which looks very similar. They have a product that looks very similar to the dose, which is made for water changes and pumping, like, the feed whatever feed you're doing. And then they have like their doser that's strictly for like dosing, 2-part chemicals. So they've kind of separated it into two products. But and in terms of software, the Apex software just wins hands down. I mean, you can set up Apex by just on your phone. You don't need to ever connect it to a computer to set it up. While the GHL, I mean, I use Macs at home. I needed to install Boot Camp just to set up my GHL, which, was a pain in the butt for me. Yeah. All right, guys, do we have more questions? I know I'm definitely par. I know my wife's listening, but man, par monitoring kit. All right, let me shout out the super chats. Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Daily Reefing. Thank you, DC Reefer. Thank you, Nick217 Reefer. Thank you, Woody. Thank you, Onika Softly. Just thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. I do. Hey, Biz, what is the next upgrade?
I'm thinking a core. I want to replace my Vectra M1. There's no real reason why. I just want to see what the Apex pump does.
How much was that Apex par meter?
The par meter, I think someone said, was 300. That's about what I paid for.
Oof.
The Senai is 200.
You can find Senai for less than that.
Yeah, you can find it less than that.
Yeah, used ones. But remember, someone brought
new.
No. Someone brought this up on another stream. There's like Senai Pond and Senai Freshwater. So watch out for those. Because the Senai Freshwater, I think that one is 150. So that actually came up a few days ago that I didn't even realize that there was a Senai Pond and a Senai Freshwater that does different things. So if you're looking to buy a new Senai, just make sure that you do buy the Senai Reef monitor.
Gotcha.
All right. Melanie Simpson, can one of the outlets on the energy bar go out when the others are still working?
Yes, that can happen. I've seen it happen. I've heard of it happening before. So yeah, one outlet can go out. If you're a DIY type of person, you can fix it, or otherwise just turn the outlet off, never use it.
I have another question that I missed earlier. Do you think you've used most of the Apex features, or is there a lot you think you haven't explored or haven't used yet?
I think there's maybe some more advanced programming. If I had a reason to do, I can do. As far as all the modules, the only module that I can think of off the top of my head that I don't have a leak detection meter or monitor. I don't have the night light, the moonlights. I don't have a wave. The wave looks interesting, but I like Vortex. I like not having that cable. The one thing that I don't like about the par meter is that it has a cable in the tank. That's the only cable in my tank, is that par meter.
What do you use for flow on the wait, I think we have one more question. Let me ask you that one more question before we go to flow. Did I miss it, man? I think I missed that question.
Hey Brian, I have a question. I have while you look it up, Seymour, I have an outlet that is constantly on my EB8, and it doesn't matter if I turn it off; it'll just stay on all the time. And I've tried putting a different device on it, and it does the same thing. Could it be like a damaged outlet?
Yes, that was actually one of the things I was going to say. Have you put something else on it, because
Yeah.
things like dosers, like the BRS dosers, if those are not on outlets 4 or 8, you will have a problem. Sometimes they don't turn off, sometimes they don't turn on. So the way around that would be, if you have to put a doser on an outlet other than 4 and 8, use a an additional plug, you know, or like a power strip or something, and plug something else into it too, like a light or something like that. But if you've done that, and you know you've tried to plug something in that has more wattage than a dosing pump, then that outlet is probably bad, and I wouldn't use it.
Gotcha.
Is it the same for the EB8? I know that was true for the EB8, but is that the same for the EB832?
No, nope. The EB832 can take anything in any outlet. That's another reason why people want to upgrade to the EB832s versus the EB8s.
All right, and I also think if you buy one of the old EB4s, all of those are
true.
You can put dosers on any other of those outlets. I think it's a mechanical versus the electronic outlets, right?
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yes, you hear that.
You hear triac, I think is what it's called, triac.
You hear the big click, click when those come on. That's how you know with the old EB8s, especially the EB4 is loud. So that's how you know. I think, you know, there's like a big click, click when it's going on and off. Because I think there's something mechanical in there that's physically disconnecting. Thank you, Reef God, for that super chat. Thank you, Bubba Shinobi, for that super chat. And Aaron's Aquariums, thank you for that super chat. My goal in life is to get Aaron Aquarium to get an Apex, because he is firmly against one. He cannot see why he would absolutely need one. And he just, you know, he sent me a message, you know, with some helpful tips during, you know, while we were just talking. And I said, hey, you know, we'll be available to help you when you get Apex. And he said, not on your life. Like, I'm sanitizing what he said. He said, never, not on your life. So my goal is to get Aaron's Aquariums to get an Apex. That's my end goal in life. So I'm working on you. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Thank you, everyone. Let me just look for some more questions. What? All right,
tell microscope.
Tell us about the microscope, man.
So obviously you can see, kind of give you an idea on the size of this thing. It is an AmScope microscope. I have objectives in the 4 times magnification, 10 times magnification, 40 times magnification, and 100 times magnification. I have a CCD camera that's connected to it. That's what this is. This plugs right on into the computer. And that's what I do a lot of my amateur microscopy with.
I have no idea what you just said, but I know Miss Lurker, and I see she just said it. I know she was nerding out because she's microscopes, I think, are her thing. She's very helpful in Reef to Reef by you know, helping users identify, you know, for instance, if someone comes on and say, I have bryopsis, she'll say, get a cheap microscope and, you know, get some photos, and she can help you identify different types of algae or things that are plaguing your tank if you can get her like a good microscopic shot of it. So she's really helpful. I think she's a mod on Reef to Reef.
Okay.
But she's really helpful of doing things like that. So I figured you start showing the microscope, she would have been nerding out. And she said it.
So the reason why I got the microscope, first off, before I got into this hobby, I was in astrophotography, which is I was taking pictures of galaxies, planets, stars, nebula with a telescope. Concept's pretty similar to microscopy, except with a telescope, you're looking at things far, far away. Microscope, you're looking at things close up. Now, when I moved to this current area that I'm in now, unfortunately, it's too bright out here to do anything deep space work. So I gave up telescopes for the reef hobby. Now, after a while, I still like optics. I still like looking at stuff. So I finally got back into looking at stuff through my microscope. Like I said, it's the same concept. A lot of the same things you do in astrophotography, you do in microscopy. So I got in there. First reason I looked at stuff under the microscope is I thought I had, what was it? I thought I had cyano, and it actually turned out to be spirulina, which you can tell it looks different under a microscope because you can see the spirals. And from there, I just started looking at a lot of different stuff. You know, it's one of those interesting things. I'm a geek, first off. I'm a science geek. So the chemistry part of reef keeping really appeals to me. You know, biology appeals to me, especially marine biology. So it all feeds my geekness. It's fun to me. No, I'm not a biologist. I work in the computer field.
Yeah, I know she's geeking out there now. Yep, spirals treatment is different. Yes.
Yes, it is.
She's been bugging me to like some weird algae I have. She's been bugging me. Get a microscope.
Yeah, I spent weeks trying to fix that problem using all kinds of different things. And in the end, when I got the microscope and I started looking at it, it was like, duh. So yeah, I know exactly what she's talking about. I had that experience. In fact, I think I have some growing on one of my MP10 power heads on the little sock that goes on them so the anemones don't go into them. And I'll plan on taking a look at it. I hope it is spirulina because you don't see a lot of videos of that. Most people think it's, you know, cyano or something else, and it's a whole different organism.
Can you show us something live on that microscope? This is EJ. Can you screen share something from the
Can I screen share something? Yeah, let me get something real quick. I'll make a slide up. Give me a couple of minutes.
All right, sure, no problem. All right, we'll give him a couple of minutes while I'll go warm up my brew. But DM, you had a question? I heard you you were gonna ask a question.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask because I'm new to the Apex, but I just recently subbed Brian, and I've been telling him how his system and it's fantastic. I mean, it's crazy, but he's been replying. He's been helping me a little bit here and there, answering questions. So I was just gonna try to see about his insight on somebody new just getting into the Apex. What would he do? Would he buy? Remember, I was talking to you earlier. Would he get the a little bit older one? Would I go with the newest one? What would, if it was him, what would he do? As far as like the price, the money, what should I get? Where should I go with that? That's what my question is to him.
I would get an Apex 2016. The reason I say that is sooner or later, Neptune is going to stop supporting the classic Apexes the same way iPhones that are old are not really supported. It's the same concept. Technology is moving forward. You have to move forward with it. So I would get an Apex 2016. The Trident, for example, is not going to work with the Apex Classic. The other thing I would say is before you get into a lot of automation, learn how to run a reef tank without it. The reason I say that is eventually it's going to fail. When it fails, I hope you kind of know what you're doing because, you know, it's going to be a week probably before you get a new one unless you just walk into a store and buy another one. So get it, yes, but learn how to run a reef without it.
There's your answer. All right, so I'm going to just close my camera for a minute, go warm up my coffee. And CJ, I am not going to ask him to put his hair under a microscope to see if it contains knowledge or what kind of knowledge is locked in it. I'm not. But just give me a minute, guys. Talk amongst yourselves, and I will just go warm up my coffee, and I'll be back. Thank you, everyone, so far.
I called Ecotech, Brian, and I'm going to send my dry side to them so I can get a longer cord.
Cool. Yeah, that's what I did to get that far. MP40 on the other side. About a week.
I want to do kind of something similar to like what you like, build a little shadow box.
All right, guys, I am back.
He's getting serious.
Thank you, Death Mage, for taking care of that. I really appreciate it. I like optics too. My octaves have lines and range markings. Oh boy. Yes, Reef Juice. Anyone know when the Trident module is coming out? I think Terrence said Q3 2018. So he also wasn't able to give us like a really solid date, which I can understand. They're probably working on a lot of things behind the scenes. So I would say Q3 2018. Mage, I like Mage. Honest, always know where you stand, pulls no punches. Thank you, Mage. Rip Van Winkle, I have a non-Apex question. I've seen 3K gyre pumps as well as max spec gyre. What are the differences? Does anyone know? The 3K gyre pumps are sort of like, I would say knockoff, but they're made under license from max spec. So I think the controller is the same. In terms of programming it, I didn't see any difference. And CJ actually has a great video about programming the gyre. So I think you can take 95 to 99% of what CJ did in his video and program the ice cap 3K pump. Also, one of the good features about the gyres is you can actually use one power supply and run 2 pumps from it. You can't do that with the ice cap 3K. And I think the ice cap 3K really matches up to the gyres like XF250s. And, you know, from taking it apart and cleaning, it doesn't seem like the parts are strong. But if you're looking for, yes, one is definitely a lot more cheaper than the other. But if you're looking for a good, solid, you know, cheaper like pump to get like the gyre type flow, the 3K gyre is $149. That includes the pump and the controller, while the gyre XF250 is that's $140 versus $339. So if you're looking for, it doesn't come with spare cages, it doesn't come with the extra sponge. Gyres come with spare cages. Also with gyres, you can take them apart and put a cap on it and run it in a nano smaller. The magnet on the gyre is much nicer. It's a cheaper pump with cheaper parts, but I think it works well. At first, when I had the gyre, when they had the 3K pump, I thought it was a little bit loud, but I have gyres now that are just as loud. So if I'm on a budget, I would definitely consider the 3K gyre. All right, so Brian, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. One second.
All right, no problem.
Now, this is a hastily put together slide.
All right, let me present you to everyone.
Wow.
Well, what we're looking at here is a nematode. You see, he's pretty fast. I'm trying to get him in the focus here. All I did is just grabbed a piece of algae that was in my overflow. I like looking at stuff in the overflow because, one, that's where a lot of algae grows in my tank. It really doesn't grow in my tank. It grows in the overflow where none of the tanks are going to eat it. Right now we are at 4 power, using the 4 times objective. And this is mainly just algae and nematodes.
Nematodes. Let me just. I'm gonna definitely put this in the description. Nema, Nematodes.
Nematodes.
Worms, basically.
All right, gotcha.
Yeah, they're just
Now
tiny
you
worms.
can't see those with the naked eye.
No. To me, this looks just like a clump of algae. A small clump of algae at that. I pulled it out with a 1 milliliter syringe.
Oh, and where does this stuff come from? And so I'm gonna ask you two questions. One, is this stuff overall beneficial for our tanks? I don't think there's any way we can not, can prevent them from. And where does this stuff come from? Does it come from we bringing in corals, from algae? How does this stuff get in our reef tanks?
So my guess here, what we're looking at now is different algae. This would kind of be like Phyto. I'm now looking at it at, what is this, my 40 times objective. So we're really, really zoomed in. Now, to get any closer to this, I would have to use oil immersion, which anybody who knows anything about microscopes and know what I'm talking about. Basically, I'd have to use oil to make the image more clear. But, you can see all these tiny cells. Like I said, this is a horribly prepared slide. This is something just thrown on a slide. I didn't separate anything out.
That's all right. This is still really cool.
This is going back to the 4 times. I'm sorry, this is 10 times.
10 times.
Let me turn down. Like, you see this thing right here?
Uh-huh.
I find a lot of those in algae. I think they're called spiracles, or I may be pronouncing it wrong. I see them all over the place. Like diatoms, I see them all over the place. Worms, I found saltwater mites, copepods. Really don't see a lot in this sample. But then again, once again, it was a quickly collected sample.
All right. Someone is saying, have you ever seen like what an ick like parasite looks like?
I haven't seen ick, but ick is a protozoa. So here, let me show you some stuff.
I found one that's a cool USB plug-in microscope, up to 250 zoom for $35 on Amazon, and it's got like 4.5 stars.
This costs a little bit more than that, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, but just for something easy, I guess, if you wanted to start looking at stuff, that'd be a pretty cool little option.
What Miss Lurker, who's the other, microscope geek here, what color is the sample to the eye?
It's greenish. It's a greenish brown.
Greenish brown. There you go.
Like I said, comes from the overflow.
I got a question real quick, Brian, just while you're doing that. You were talking just a little bit ago about your calcium reactor. You don't want the solenoid to click on and off all the time.
Yeah.
What is the key, or I run a calcium reactor myself, and I'm just wondering, mine goes off every, I'd say 20 minutes, 25 minutes, it's going off to bring the pH back down to 6.6. So do I increase my CO2 and leave the drip the way it is, or do I slow down my drip?
So the idea is to get a steady CO2 as you can. So you can reduce the CO2 and it will take longer to get to that trigger point and turn off. That's typically how I go. I set my effluent level to whatever it's going to be. When I was running it off of a pump, I do 100 milliliters, and then I would reduce my CO2 until it didn't trip on and off over and over again.
Okay, so keep my drip the way it is, but just lowered my bubbles intake, so it just constantly just keeps flowing into the reactor.
Yeah, like so I have a aquarium plant's carbon doser. So I can control it based off of how many bubbles per second, or I could also turn it down to where it's not putting in as much CO2. So I have mine, I believe, at my pressure is, I want to say 7 in my bubbles. Let me check real quick.
Yeah, I just got the Milwaukee MC something 995 or controller.
Yeah, I'm doing 1 bubble every 6 seconds.
Oh wow. I'm doing like I'm doing a lot faster than that. Okay. I'm gonna go check that, but all right.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So copepods, you see these all the time. Can you see that?
Oh. Oh,
Now, this
nice.
is dark field, which basically the background is all black, so you can see more of the inside detail. Copepod eggs.
Wow.
What else?
This is stuff you took, right? This is all stuff from your microscope.
Yeah, this is all stuff from my scope. So diatoms.
Wait, which one is diatoms? Is it the big brown one or the smaller?
Yeah, these are diatoms. The circle, what I believe it is I can't pronounce it. Trachymonas.
So diatoms is a living organism that, for whatever reason, when the conditions are right, they just reproduce, and that's what shows in our tanks.
Yes.
Oh shucks.
Yeah, and they have a hard shell on them, kinda.
Oh man, I came for an Apex lesson. I'm getting a biology lesson.
So I can look at this stuff all day long. Just watch this little dot moving around.
Okay, you know what? I need to set up a stream with, let's say, you and Miss Fox coming on, and we'll talk about it. It won't be a tech talk. We'll have to do, something that's convenient with YouTube. But I would love to have like a one-off stream where we kind of talk about some of the on this level, some of the stuff that happens. Would you be down for that?
Yeah, definitely. I don't have a lot of friends who are into microscopes, so yeah, I'd love to. I have a lot of questions too. I'm just learning this part of the hobby myself.
Yeah,
I sit in awe and stuff like this.
Oh man, she's asking, that's amphibidium. Yeah. Yes, I think I gotta set something up that kind of, I don't know when, but where you guys discuss this I'm probably gonna have to get a microscope and try something so I can at least sound intelligent with this. But I think I didn't know that diatoms were actually a living organism. It just came to me when you were showing that and said, oh, it's something living that just happens to reproduce when the conditions are right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
okay. Now, you've seen the videos of my tank, and you don't see like a algae covered sand bed, or you don't see a dirty sand bed in my tank. But once again, I can look in my overflow and see all this stuff. It blows my mind, because I know this stuff is algae and should be reproducing, but it only reproduces in this one area. If I look at the sand bed, I can see some of it, but it's not to the point where it's overpowering, and it's a natural balance.
Okay. All right. Wow. Okay. All right. Tonight was awesome.
Yeah, you had a good guest. Oh, really good.
And I'm guessing that's some kind of snail or
No, that I'm guessing is some kind of ciliate. I think that's how you pronounce it. You can see the little hairs that are moving it around.
Wow.
And you know, depending on where I look, the most interesting place to look for me right now is the skimmer cup.
oh.
Because there's all kinds of things in the skimmer cup. It blows my mind, the things in the skimmer cup. Let me find something cool. This is life in the skimmer cup.
Oh.
Look at all those little dots. Oh, wow.
So every time you dump this in your kitchen sink, that's what you're pouring down the drain.
Is that good or bad?
Well, I mean, you have all kinds of stuff. You have bacteria in here. The larger organisms are eating the bacteria. That's why they keep swimming through it. Smaller macroalgae.
All right.
I mean, if you know, I don't know how clear you guys see this footage, but the entire thing is moving.
Yeah, we can see that. CJ was said he would like to see an algae scrubber under that.
I think your algae scrubber would look like something like my overflow.
Okay.
You'll see a lot of worms. You'll see some protozoa in there probably.
All right. Okay. All right.
You'll see copepods.
I'm definitely, I mean, guys, give me a thumbs up. I think I definitely do for a live stream or at least something recorded. Yeah, mind blown. Something recorded with Brian, the Business Reef, and Miss Lurker Fox. I'll have the Miss Lurker, I'll message you, you know, through Hangouts and try to set something up. But if you're willing, you know, I think this would be interesting. I think this would definitely be interesting to watch something like this. You guys talk about this stuff and discuss it, and maybe, you know, we'll take some predetermined questions. And I don't know. I guess I'll shoot you guys. I'll get you guys maybe emails, and we can go back and forth about a format. But I think a one-off kind of stream about this would be awesome. Or maybe there needs to be a chemistry stream. She said she'd love to talk about it. Yep. So the votes are in. Yeah, maybe a chemistry stream that deals with stuff, because this is awesome. This is cool. Oh, look at that. And I'm looking at it and just thinking it's just water, just flowing. I never thought about all the life that's possibly. So when the coral polyps are out, that's the kind of stuff that it's like picking up and feeding on.
Yes.
Oof. Oof. All right. All right. It's on. How much more time do you have, Brian?
What time is it now?
10.
Past my bedtime.
All right.
But I got a little. I mean, I got a little more time. If you guys want to talk.
All right. If you guys any more question, we'll keep looking at this. If you guys any more question, Miss Fox is saying she'll have to up her game on the microscope.
I'm just a beginner, so she probably has more game than I do. Like I said, I started out looking at galaxies and planets and stuff with a telescope, and I do this because I can't go outside. It's too bright with the telescope now. So,
is that a fireworm?
It's a bristleworm.
Bristleworm. When you let me go back to what you're saying. Somebody who's just science fiction lover. When you say it's too bright, what does that mean? And what city were you moving from to where you are now?
I was in a more suburban area of St. Louis.
Okay. Okay. So like now I'm in New York City, you're saying it's probably too bright, but if I was moving to the suburbs somewhere, it'll be, you know, nice and quiet. Okay. All right. Okay. She is recommending an $80 scope on Amazon is a great beginner. They make cell phone attachment for the scope as well. So Miss Fox, I made you you're now a moderator, but if you can find that link on Amazon and post it, that'll definitely be helpful to help, some of us start to look at the prices of some of this stuff, microscope. So if you can grab the link from, she's saying she lives in Missouri. I don't. Hey, Brian is in Missouri too. So what do you mean?
Yeah, where are you at in Missouri?
All right, so she posted the link. So it's an Amscope. Okay.
Yeah, I have an Amscope T490.
There is some kind of delay. She said she's in Mizzou country. He's in Missouri too. He's in St. Louis, but he just, like a rough town, I guess. What is Mizzou?
I'm in Olivet, Missouri, St. Louis, basically.
So Mizzou is, I'm guessing, is that where the school is, Mizzou? Because I see that, University of Missouri called Mizzou. So does that mean she's in wherever the university is?
Yeah, Mizzou is the big Missouri State University.
Yeah.
In Columbia, about 2.5 hours from here.
Yeah, Columbia, Missouri. Yep. All right. Wait, you said you have let me just add this to Amazon. Let me just add this.
I have the T490.
So you T490. Amscope T490. Amscope. T490. Okay, that's not bad. It's not crazy. It's $288, but it's not crazy.
And you see what I'm doing with it. Now, of course, if I upgrade it, I can do so much more. But I believe in where I am right now with microscopy, this is perfect for my needs. Now, I'll probably start upgrading the objectives. Maybe get a better light source. You think, guys, every time you touch the water, you're touching this stuff?
Is that a good or bad?
I'm just saying, it is what it is.
Should we be scared? Should we?
If you haven't died yet, you're not gonna die probably from it.
Oh man, my wife is now gonna get on me to wash my hands every time I get close to the tank now. All right. Miss Lurker, you're keeping that wrench. I'm not taking it away. So that's it. All right. I appreciate it, man. I really do appreciate you coming on tonight. This was really helpful. I think I'll cut this up into 2 different parts. The first part about the Apex, and then I'll cut the stuff up with the microscope stuff, and then set it out as like a teaser once we can sort of, hammer down some of the details of maybe having a separate stream about, some of the microscopy stuff. All right. Are there any more questions? I am looking, guys, if you have any more questions.
Yeah, I'm just showing videos at this point, y'all. I mean, all this stuff has been taken by me and this microscope. Some stuff has made YouTube videos, other stuff hasn't. So, some cases you're getting a sneak peek at future videos.
All right, I'm going once. There is a delay, so I'm gonna say going once and give it like 30 seconds. Going twice. Hey, can you just say hi in the Brian? Can you just say hi in the Can you just say hi in the Hangouts chat? It's easy for sort of people to just sub your channel. Click. There he is. There he is. So click go to his channel and definitely sub him up. And when I do kind of put this, when this goes on YouTube, I'll definitely add, you know, your name, and I'll definitely put a link to your channel.
Been fun talking to you guys. You know, this is probably the longest I've been on a live stream forever.
All right.
But it's been fun.
All right. All right. So thank you, guys. I think I'm going to end this for tonight. Thank you again to Brian, the Business Reef, for coming on tonight. And if there's anyone else who's going to set up a live stream, you know, go ahead and just, you know, you guys can put it in the chat. I don't know if Reef Jeeves or someone else is going to stream. But that is it for tonight. But thanks, everyone, and have a good night. All right. Thank you again, Brian. Thank you for everyone that that joined, and have a good night, people.